Welcome to episode 72 of The 5-Minute Investor, the podcast where we break down stocks at the heart of two stories shaping your investing week. I'm Trevor Abbas.
And I'm Jonathan Brown. Each week we bring one stock, one headline, and one reason investors should care.
This week we're focusing on rising copper demand, which the International Energy Agency sees falling into a 30% deficit by 2035, beginning as soon as 2027, according to a report from BMI, as new AI data centers, electrical grid enhancements, and renewable energy technology proliferate across the globe, straining a copper market dealing with falling grades and dwindling investment. This mismatch is, in turn, shining a light on copper companies in production, on track for future growth, best positioned to capitalize on the metal's varied industrial applications. John gets us started with one of the premier operators in the copper space.
Love it or hate it, AI data centers demand is a major driver of copper consumption, which is up around 40% since last year, for a number of reasons, but AI is a big one. Copper is needed for power systems, electrical wiring, networking equipment, and grid infrastructure. So let's talk about one of the biggest copper producers out there, Freeport-McMoRan, FCX, on the New York Stock Exchange. Freeport is an American mining company and a major copper producer that produced 3.5 billion pounds of copper in 2025, a drop from 4 billion in 2024 because of a major mudslide in Indonesia, which the company was hit with a class action lawsuit over, but even that couldn't stunt its momentum.
Okay, I gotta know, John, how much has the stock rallied in that time?
Well, a year ago, Freeport stock was in the $30 to $40 US neighborhood, but copper prices shot up in November, and the stock hasn't looked back and now trades around $50 to $60 US.
That's more than $80 Canadian, I think. Pretty pricey in this economy, no?
That's true. This is where we get into a price versus value discussion. You can't really find an average price among copper stocks, right? Because stock prices depend on shares issued and other factors. But I compared FCX stock to a few others. Southern Copper, that's more than 180 US a share. BHP, that's around 80 US. Now, both of those companies have bigger market capitalizations than FCX, which is also a pretty beefy one at 90 billion US. And I'm not saying they're better or worse than Freeport. They do have more stable, and they pay pretty big dividends. But Freeport has pure exposure to a rising copper demand. So there's some food for thought for you.
Okay, let's get down to brass tacks, John. In your estimation, what does Freeport's future look like regarding copper's relationship with AI data center development?
As AI companies build more and more data centers and utilities expand the electrical grid to power them, demand for copper is expected to climb, putting Freeport-McMoRan, again, FCX on the NYSE, as one of the world's largest copper producers, and they're in a strong position to benefit from the AI infrastructure boom with higher profits. But now that we've covered the copper top in the room, let's shift gears and take a different angle. Trevor here has a stock whose story talks of growth and expanding production as the need for AI infrastructure continues to accelerate.
That's right, John. My stock, optimally aligned with capitalizing on long-term copper demand, is Capstone Copper, ticker CS on the TSX, market cap 10.12 billion Canadian, whose recent exponential returns might make listeners think they've missed the boat, but in my opinion, they'd be wrong.
I like the confidence. And our listeners and I are eager to parse through the evidence. So where do we start?
Let's start with Capstone's assets, including 4 producing mines in the US, Mexico, and Chile, which have posted strong production growth as of late, from 164,000 tons in 2023 to 184,000 tons in 2024 to 225,000 tons in 2025, with mine lives estimated between 2038 and 2049, and up to 230,000 tons guided for 2026 at cash costs of only $245 to $275 per payable pound of copper. A pound of copper, for reference, is going for $6.44 at the time of recording, granting the company a hefty margin to work with. Looking ahead, Capstone has a plan in place to increase production by up to 70%, while reducing cash costs by at least 30%, backed by a leadership team with more than 150 years of mine build and operations experience, setting the stage for the company to foster shareholder value over the coming years.
Okay. The Capstone's project portfolio is obviously noteworthy, but has the company been successful at translating production into greater earnings power?
No doubt it has, with adjusted EBITDA on a trailing 12-month basis standing at 1.24 billion, that's US dollars, up from 953 million in 2025, 496 million in 2024, and a quaint 260 million in 2023. Net income looks attractive as well, with more than 170 million earned through Q1 and Q2 2026, following 349.7 million in 2025 and 85.9 million in 2024. The company also had access to about $1 billion in liquidity as of June 2026, well ahead of the 790 million in capital expenditures it has planned for 2026, positioning it to advance its growth initiatives without touching any internally generated cash flow.
All right, I'm almost convinced Capstone's investment thesis has certainly taken shape. Long life assets with untapped cost efficiencies, growing profits, and a target commodity propelled by a long term cross industry tailwind, I see. The last question I have to ask you then, though, is about market sentiment. Are investors, broadly speaking, tapped into Capstone's value proposition?
Well, boasting a more than 1,100% return since 2020, making Capstone a more than 10-bagger over the period, the only answer to your question, John, is an undeniable yes, with significant upside remaining on the table should the company's increasingly efficient operations carry on amidst copper's worsening deficit.
As always, you can find links to the articles from today's episode in the show notes and more investing insights on stockhouse.com.
And you can find the 5-Minute Investor on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Stockhouse, as well as Spotify, where we're overjoyed to have received 28 ratings to date. Thanks to everyone who's taken the time. It really helps the show reach new listeners. This podcast is produced in partnership with Freeport-McMoRan Inc. and Capstone Copper Corp. and is intended for informational purposes only. For full disclaimer information, please visit stockhouse.com/legal/disclaimer.